CEN is the European Committee for Standardization, which is an association that brings together 34 European countries. CEN is a platform that develops European standards and technical specifications, which are implemented by national standards bodies who have an obligation then to withdraw any conflicting national standards.
Sometimes people ask why it takes such a long time to develop a Eurocode, and in part that's because there are rather a lot of steps in the process. And there's the initial work to develop the draft of the standard, which in the context of the Eurocodes has involved all of the work of the project teams and all of our subcommittees, working groups, etc. Once that draft has reached a mature state and is ready to go to inquiry, it goes through a process of confirmation by the TC250 Secretary and Chair. It then goes through an editorial process supported by the CEN CCMC Management Centre and their editorial and publication team. It then goes through translation. We then have the formal process of inquiry, which gathers many comments and feedback on the standard. That's then passed back to the relevant subcommittee or working group who evolve the standard further before it gets passed back to the CEN TC250 Committee Secretary and Chair to again affirm that it's suitable to go to formal vote. Further process of editing, of translation, and then we have the key formal vote step. And then after a formal vote, then there's just a few final tweaks before it's made available to the national standards bodies. The CEN Technical Board have been particularly supportive of the Eurocode evolution, and it's something that we've been very grateful for. They've allowed us to have a few derogations to the usual processes that have been important because there are some specific characteristics of the Eurocodes. It is such a complex and important and interdependent suite of standards. They've helped us through making sure that there is clarity of responsibility. They've helped us in terms of the style of the Eurocode. So they've enabled us to maintain a 2-point numbering system for equations and figures and tables when the CEN standard is to have a single point system. And for users, that was something which the engineering community said was really important. They've also helped us in terms of the way in which the process of inquiry and formal vote is undertaken, allowing us to set up a program with 2 windows each year when we undertake inquiries and formal votes so that people can plan for when these are going to take place. And also really importantly, the agreement to having a single data withdrawal for all Eurocode parts. When the first generation of the Eurocodes were drafted, there were rather a lot of derogations from the CEN rules, and as a consequence, there wasn't the same editorial scrutiny that there will be for the second generation of the Eurocodes. And so not only are we getting really valuable support from the CEN editorial and publication team to strengthen the clarity, consistency within the Eurocodes, but we also have the benefit that if in the future there are amendments or corrigenda, that those can now be consolidated into the Eurocode drafts, whereas in the past with the first generation, they were published separately. Another important difference is that with the first generation of the Eurocodes, these were released to national standards bodies either in Word or PDF format. A big change is that with the second generation of the Eurocodes, the standards will be released in Word and PDF form, but also in XML format. And I think that's a really exciting development because that unlocks all sorts of possibilities for national standards bodies to then provide that knowledge, that information that's contained within the Eurocodes, not, if you like, as essentially an electronic version of a paper document, but actually as a database of requirements that could be interfaced in all sorts of different ways. So the interdependencies between the Eurocodes have really been tackled in 3 ways. It's about how we've organized ourselves, it's about how we've undertaken the work, and it's about how we've designed the outputs. So in terms of how we've organized ourselves, we have a key group, we call it the TC250 Coordination Group, and that brings together the chairs and conveners of the subcommittees, the working groups, and we meet twice a year and we talk through all of those technical coordination issues where we have common interests and we need to achieve commonality of approach. We also have horizontal groups focused on particular topics that cut across the whole of the Eurocode suite. So, for example, bridge engineering or design for fire. We've also got individuals assigned as liaison officers between subcommittees and working groups, and they have a personal accountability to make sure that if there are developments on matters of common interest, that those different groups have full visibility, transparency of what's happening. So that's the organizational pieces then in terms of the working approach. And that's really been around planning and transparency. So when we designed the work program, we designed that to have 4 phases. So we could start working on those documents that had the broadest impact first, and then perhaps work on those that have less impact later. So key documents like EN 1990, the basis of design, were the first documents that were worked on, or across the suite of steel design standards, to start on the general parts before moving on to the more specific parts. It's also been about making sure that there is transparency, availability of all the document drafts as they progress, so that different committees can see what's happening and understand what's changing. And then finally, in terms of the outputs, well, that's really about making sure we've got commonality of structure and commonality of approach, and the technical reviewer has been so important in that work and the guidance that we've developed.
CEN Technical Board, or BT, gave CEN TC 250 the overall responsibility for structural and geotechnical design rules. This BT decision gave the responsibility to minimise any incompatibility or inconsistencies with other CEN TC standards. CEN TC 250 wrote to over 60 CEN TCs dealing with this area of work and construction works, and has resulted in close liaisons with over 40 of those CEN TCs and 2 ISO technical committees.
I often think that drafting standards it's a really challenging thing to do. Of all the things I get the opportunity to be involved in, all sorts of different kinds of projects, world-class projects of incredible scale, fascinating projects. I think standards development is one of the most intellectually, cognitively challenging things that I work on. And just writing a really good code clause is difficult. Writing a good section of a code is harder. Writing a good standard is harder still. Achieving a consistent suite of standards is a really difficult thing to do. And so all of those building blocks we put in place to try and achieve that consistency, I think, have been really fundamental to trying to fulfill that ambition that we've got to achieve the best we can across such a complex and broad suite of standards.